Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Boys Season 4 review. We're covering the finale, episode 8. This one is called Assassination Run. And, well, what did I think of it? Ultimately, this was a pretty disappointing end to this season. It still had some fun moments to it. Overall, though, it's a bit disappointing. It's a bit of a letdown. This whole season overall has been a construction to just being a setup to next season. Nothing really amounts to much of anything in this other than they've degraded the characters of the boys to the point to where when you split them off, there's no emotional connection or resonance between anybody and the audience itself, especially when they waste some equity they built up in a character, say like Kimiko. Now, I might be jumping around a little bit in this review. I have a whole set of notes, but I'm not going to go by any sort of organization. I'm just going to give you my thoughts free of any sort of like, hey, I'm just reading my notes and I'm going to explain this and that. I might get to a little bit of these notes, but overall, like the feeling of how this season has gone compared to other seasons, like clearly the first season is the best. Second season was very divisive. I still like the show, even though I was noticing all the problems with it. I still like the show. I'm still a fan of Anthony Starr, Carl Urban. So it's like I got to keep going. And Jack Quaid is Huey. And I still stuck with season 3, which still I liked. It had some really fun moments. Pretty consistent story. Otherwise, forgetting like all the messaging and everything and all the drawbacks that came with it, I still very much enjoyed the show. This season, though, feels like it has just gone like completely quadrupled down on its politics and putting in real life situations. And it's just gotten to the point where it's just not, it doesn't have the emotional impact that it once did. And it, quite frankly, it beats you over the head with a sledgehammer most of the time. And it's unfortunate that the show had to go down this route, and Eric Kripke and the creative staff felt like they had to keep the foot on the pedal with this. And unfortunately, it's hurt the show. It's hurt the characters. They find it funny to keep abusing everybody. Nobody is likable in this show. They've degraded Huey to the point where, he's basically begging to apologize to Starlighter when she finally gets freed later on in the episode. And you're not really feeling for Huey. And even though it did have a fun little smirk where she did forgive him for sleeping with the fake Starlighter, aka the shapeshifter, that did get a smirk out of me where she's like, "You will be tested for all of your shapeshifter syphilis," and he just smiles and he's like, "Yes, I still have a girlfriend." At the same time, he's been abused and he's been used, quite frankly, for the last like 4 episodes. So he's still not feeling traumatic from any of this, and he's well within his right to be like, hey, you can't fucking blame me for the issues that have been happening here, especially with fake Starlighter. I mean, yes, I noticed something was off, but I didn't know she was basically you. And of course, it does ultimately get to where Starlighter does, by those comments, she does acknowledge, like, I understand, I know, but I'm still mad about the whole situation, which that's a pretty fair point of view. But at the same time, the way just this whole season has played out, like in that storyline, the payoff just isn't there. And then you have Kimiko and Frenchie. Frenchie goes through this wild ass gay romance story, which that's never been part of this show. It's referenced a little bit in season 1, but it comes back around now. And then by the end of this, he's kissing and getting romantically interested in Kimiko, where we were there to begin with at this beginning of this season. This felt like his whole story arc was completely unnecessary and a complete waste of fucking time. So you've now taken out like half of your cast with nonsensical stories just for the sake of, hey, let's just do something because it might be fun. It's not fun. We've been with these characters for 3 years, and you've basically taken all the equity out of everything. Because when Kimiko utters her first words ever in this show, because Frenchie is being hauled off by Homelander's super task force of grabbing everybody who ever betrayed him, throwing them all in prison, the emotional punch just isn't there. She's screaming no, not to take Frenchie away. And you feel nothing. It's just hollow, empty. Like you've taken so much equity out of you built up so much equity in these characters. When you go to cash in those particular moments, you want that to hit with the audience. That didn't hit here. Didn't hit at all. This whole season is just an ultimate setup for basically what's going to be the fifth and final season, which I get that, but you never want to spend a whole season setting up the next season. You can set up to where your finale like leads immediately into the next season with a nice little cliffhanger, but this whole not much really happened this season. Everybody's plots failed. The assassination run basically did not work out, where they were trying to take out, Singer, and that didn't work out, but they ended up getting Singer by other means. They got him like jailed. Sage comes back around, still acting like, I knew you were going to treat me like that. And I kind of was planning that you might not listen to me and you might throw me out. So I kind of went ahead with my own plans, but I still got your back. I'm still the smartest woman. I'm still the smartest person in the world. And that didn't really pay off very well either. It makes sense, but it didn't really feel like it connected. You're not really landing the plane or delivering the punchline to a joke. It didn't really land because you didn't really show any little tidbits of that through the season, where she was one little step ahead of Homelander. So it didn't really pay off like they probably hoped or intended. The creative staff might feel like, hey, we did just fine. In my opinion, you did not. And, basically a lot of characters have been downgraded. And ultimately, we find out what's happening with Billy Butcher. He has this like kind of, what's going on with him is the V has turned him into what I call Prototype. If anybody's played the video game Prototype from quite a few years ago, or in Prototype 2, or it might be more akin to, say, like Venom a little bit. He's got tentacles that come flying out of his chest and stomach, and they just go after everybody and they kill everybody. So that's ultimately what's going on with him, and he's accepted what his role is because he's so close to death. And Ryan has basically told them all to like leave him alone when they tried to confront him about, hey, we need you to take care of Homelander. And he's just like, you know what? No. And to Billy Butcher's credit, he tried to stop Grace from telling Ryan like all of this stuff, like we're getting there about with the truth about what they need Ryan for. But Grace just kind of like, she was so impatient and impetuous that she just had to, we got to tell him, and we got to tell him now because we're out of time. This is another example of characters continuing the same mistakes over and over and over and over again in this season, let alone this whole show. And it's old at this point. It's just old. It's boring and it's tired and it doesn't connect and it doesn't land the same way anymore. It's been especially bad this season because, you're just echoing things that have been repeated in previous seasons. Nobody fucking learns from any of this. And you can make the argument that this is life. No, some people do learn from shit. Not everybody keeps making the same fucking mistakes over and over and over and over and over again. And, not trusting Billy, not listening to Billy. I know Billy's like aggressive and he's a little too abrasive, but he gets shit done. If people would actually try and work with him to begin with, they wouldn't be in this mess. And Grace she's always trying to insert herself into each situation. So she ends up getting killed by Ryan. So unfortunately, that's out of the question. Ryan's gone. And, and then we got Billy Butcher just kind of being like, all right, guess I'm going to have to do this myself. So he gets the the viral anti-serum, or the virus, to be able to take out Homelander with one little bullet. I don't think he knows if it's going to really work or not, but he's also got his own superpowers now, so it may or may not work out. And it basically ends with Billy driving off into God knows where with the weapons and trying to figure out a plan to probably try and take out Homelander, while the boys have all been subdued and captured and very likely going to be imprisoned now. But Starlighter did escape. She got her powers back at the end of the episode. And so when it comes to anything else pertaining to this particular episode, there's a couple other things I just want to kind of cover super quick. And one of those is like a lot of these storylines weren't exactly like landing. I already went over, Frenchie and Kimiko. Like, there's just, you have scenes with them, but they're not connecting. They're not landing in a coherent story. Feels like they really didn't think this through because of how they're setting it up for season 5 to be the big bad season where things finally get resolved. I guess we'll see about that. But, you got things like Annie and Huey and their issues, and fake Starlighter, fake Annie. Starlighter ultimately escapes, but fake Annie keeps sleeping with Huey, and she keeps, you get the obvious, the yin and the yang of Annie, the good and the bad side. So, and they even get to the point where the two have a fight with each other, and it's probably the weakest fucking fight I have ever seen in this show. Whereas we just saw the shapeshifter fake Annie just beating the shit out of freaking everybody, including Kimiko, and snapping her neck. Yet Starlighter, within like a minute, basically chokes her out and kills her that way. It's like, you kind of set the shapeshifter up to be a little bit of a badass, and you just take her out like that. If you're trying to subvert expectations, you've definitely done it this season, and this is a great example of that. Like, you build this up, you build this up, you build this up to, oh, and no, we're not going to do it the way you think, and it's going to be over very quick. One of the other kind of things with Annie and Huey, though, is, I'm not feeling their relationship anymore. They do this whole proposal with fake Annie and whatnot, and it doesn't, it's just, I don't feel this episode like at all. As far as like multiples of these storylines. And then, we also have like, say, like the 7 and dealing with Ashley. Ashley ends up taking the V compound. We don't know how what she's going to turn into, but she finds out that the 7 are going to take out all of their enemies within Vought. There's even an interesting, I'll say it's a kind of a fun segment where they're just chasing people through like one floor of the Vought Tower, and they're just offing everybody, and Black Noir kills the wrong Ashley, and it's just like, oh well. And then he was like, hey, murder boner. It's like, oh dude, like, if I know the show is crass, it's always been that way. Crass, gory, disgusting. It just feels tired at this point. Like, nothing is like the shock value should have been saved for certain circumstances and certain moments. We don't need it like all the freaking time. It desensitizes you. So when Deep takes out somebody, it's like, okay, I guess we're doing that. Cool. And Deep's having like second thoughts about having like not accidentally, but almost, not even almost. He killed his octopus, and that was kind of too bad. Even though that was a disgusting story to begin with, like, Jesus Christ. Next up, I have to say, like, I mean, you could probably tell by the tone of my voice, I'm just defeated by this season. Like, it's just, this wasn't good. Like, and the storyline for taking out the President Singer was just, it didn't even work. Nothing happened. And Singer just gets carted off. He later gets arrested because he's admitted to, hey, if you'd just taken out Newman when I told you to, we wouldn't be in this mess. It's like, okay, you're just kind of going a cheap way to take him out, where you could have left that open for season 5 and dealt with it then accordingly. But we're not doing that, so they installed somebody else as the president, and ultimately, like, he's a Homelander puppet. And I want to say probably the only other thing I talk about is Ryan. Ryan is shaping up to be a pretty interesting character so far. He hasn't been this whine. He wasn't really all that whiny these last few episodes, and it feels like he's actually kind of playing a little bit up to the standards of everybody else on the cast, let alone as a character. And he's growing up. But the question is he going to fully come around, or what's ultimately going to happen? I do dig that story. I still dig like the Homelander, Billy Butcher, and Ryan angle. That still works for me just fine. Carl Urban did a really good job in this episode. I'm not exactly a fan of what they're doing with Billy as a character, but the performance was awesome. So Anthony Starr, another great turn as Homelander, and the cast certainly does give it a whirl and give it a crack, but clearly like the main attraction is those guys. And Mother's Milk, Mr. Alonso did very great. I'm enjoying him, but he felt like he hit the background of this story, and conspicuous by his absence, A Train is still long gone. It's basically a throwaway line at the very beginning of this episode where they canceled this movie, and they felt like they could make some more money on taking a tax write-off instead of actually putting it in theaters. Ha 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 ha, bravo. Fucking stupid. And yeah, yeah, I'm at a loss for words so far. Like, I don't know if I want to continue with season 5 at this point. I probably will out of morbid curiosity. We might do things a little bit differently when season 5 does roll around. Um, I mean, if you like these videos, I might do them a little bit differently. I might do them as a little bit of a watch along, and then afterwards we could do chit chatting about points. I'd actually really like to try that. I thought about trying that tonight, but there was other things going on tonight. So I wanted to make sure I caught all of that, watched this, and then was able to actually record a bit of a review. Ultimately, the episode was okay. It's pretty mid. It had some fun moments, some nice fight scenes, good CGI going on. Ultimately, I feel like this was a bit of a letdown as a finale compared to previous seasons where they always end with like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? This just felt more like, okay, guess we'll just wait till next season. Yeah, it's another cliffhanger, ends on a interesting moment, but it's not so interesting that it really elicit a reaction out of you, because if you're like me and you've been a fan of the show, and you even acknowledge like there's been issues the last few seasons with everything going on, but like that this season is just like, oh God, what are we doing here? Then you're probably gonna fall into the same trap as I am, where it's just like, well, that was a whole lot of nothing. Like it honestly felt like a waste of time this season. And I don't know how you could have fixed it other than rewrite the whole fucking thing and actually get off your high horse about, being so goddamn political with this show. But beyond that, I did enjoy it. Um, no, fuck that. I didn't like this episode. I didn't like this season. Screw this show and the horse it rode in on. And will I watch next season? Maybe, maybe not. Like I just said, if I do, I'm probably going to do it a bit differently. And hey, if you're down for that, please hit that like button down below. Put a comment. What did you think about this finale? Did it work for you? If it did, hey, that's cool. I'm not knocking anybody who likes this show. I'm just talking about this from my point of view and my perspective and my opinion. So this is my own opinion. I didn't like this season. It sucked. So if you also like this video, hey, hit the little subscribe button, little bell notification, and we will see you all on some other show, hopefully a good one. And I would love to talk about a good one. Believe me, I don't like crapping on shows unless they're actually really bad in my eyes and in my opinion. So that said, one more time, like this video down below, comment on anything you've seen, anything you heard, anything I didn't cover. put it down below. And also, please subscribe, hit that little bell notification so you can stay tuned to all of our video content. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you next time.